Yo, wait for you guys to jump in. We have a couple other guys waiting here too. Hey, hope you guys are doing well. I hope you can hear me. We're just gonna wait a couple more minutes to see if some more people join in. We kind of promoted this one a little late, so not sure how many people are gonna jump in with us. Usually we promote them for about a week. I think this time we only did about 2 days. But Chloe, you can unmute them if they'd like to talk. Only 2. I don't think I can unmute them. Oh, there we go. How you guys doing?
Hey, what's going on?
Not too much. We got a couple other people joining in. I got some people in the waiting room, so we're just gonna hang out here for a second while some other people join in. How are you guys doing?
Not too bad.
Not
All
too
things.
Yeah, all things considered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, doing well. Thank you. How are you?
Doing pretty well. Very busy. We have a lot of stuff, some new products coming out, a lot of stuff that I'm working on kind of behind the scenes. This is more like the public side of what I do here, but there's so much other stuff that goes on. It's really exciting, but it's hard for us to kind of share some of those things. What's up, Joel? Good to see you again. Just to give you guys who don't know, or maybe this is your first time in these, my name's Ethan. I'm a product manager. I do a lot of like the drivetrain developments. I work on some neat hub programs as well. Today, we're gonna just like go through, we get a lot of questions from people about, you know, I have this issue with my drivetrain and I can't figure it out, or you know, these are some noises I'm hearing. So I'm just going to go and address some of those to hopefully help you guys diagnose on your bikes. And then if anybody has, you know, friends, a lot of this stuff won't apply specific to the box component. You know, they're really good for any drivetrain. They're universal for the most part. So if you guys do have specific questions about maybe some tips or tricks or areas that you need addressed, type them into chat, and then Chloe will do them off to me, and I'll make sure that I answer them. But for the most part, I think that, yeah, this will address most of the, you know, shifting performance issues, noises that you hear, maybe initial setup issues that you can be aware of, so that before you go on your first ride, or, you know, maybe you go on a ride and with a new derailleur cable and it's stretched out a little bit, you can figure out how to fix it. But we're just going to wait a couple more minutes here. I got a couple people in the waiting room jumping in who are loading. So we're just going to wait for 1 minute here. I'm going to bring something up.
Ethan.
Yes, sir.
You're from Jersey, right?
I am. I'm from northern New Jersey, about 15 minutes outside New York City.
Okay, I won't give you crap for your hat then.
Oh, for my hat. Yeah, I can't help it. I die hard Yankees fan. We'll see what happens this year, but I guess all sports is kind of nerfed right now, which is a bummer. You know.
Well, as long as people don't go to the bars like Miami does.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's hard to, you know, people to change their routine, especially with sports. It's like, you know, that's like a social thing, right?
Yeah.
So you guys can just 1 second.
I did something the other day that I'm a big sports fan. You know how fans felt when they canceled Firefly?
Yeah.
Cracked me up a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, for me, a lot of what I feel like I'm missing out on is, you know, I travel to Taiwan a lot. So I can't do that at all because Taiwan is banned travel from the U.S., a bunch of other countries as well. So it's not just us, but we're definitely top on their list of people that are not allowed. So it's hard for me to get projects done when I can't be there. I think last year I spent about 2 months in Taiwan. And it's an awesome place. It's really cool. There's a lot of cycling. It's basically like an island with a big mountain on it. So there's really cool mountain bike trails. There's really scary bugs and stuff. There's some really terrible Chinese smog that rolls in. But outside of that, the road cycling and mountain biking out there is pretty cool. So that's a big thing I'm missing out on. I do watch a lot of like basketball. I watch some baseball too, but yeah, outside of that and some cycling sports, pretty much life is normal. I'm going to kick this thing off. So basically, thanks everybody for joining me today. We're going to talk about some tips and tricks about, box drivetrains. And I actually have the camera on a tripod, so I'll get it close up to the drivetrain. Hopefully you guys can see some of the small details that are tough to maybe see in some of my installation instructions and videos. And for those, it looks like 4 or 5 people just joined in. For those, feel free if you have questions about, drivetrain issues, some noise. Am I muted? Can you guys hear me? You can hear me. Okay. It said I was muted. Yeah, if you guys have any questions about, drivetrain issues that you have, noises that you hear, things that you can't figure out how to fix, type them in the chat and I'll make sure I answer them. But basically, behind me, I have the same bike that we did the box 3 install on. I did another video webinar where we put a box 4 on this bike. This is a box 3 drivetrain. And what I did is I messed with some of the adjustments so it doesn't shift correctly, and it'll exhibit some of the common issues that we have. And I get asked a lot of times, not just for box drivetrains, but for anything, because I've been a bike mechanic for 15 years, how do I fix this issue or that issue? So we'll go through some of those. One of the big ones that we see is issues shifting between gears. So it doesn't necessarily matter what gear you're in, it won't shift to the gear higher or maybe the gear lower. And typically that's because of cable tension. So the cable has to be pulled a certain amount so that when you click on the shifter, it pulls the derailleur over the correct amount. Now, in the, the shifter, it's got a bunch of different clicks. These clicks are spaced specifically so that you, when you shift, the chain lands right where that gear center line is. Now, there is a range of cable adjustment that will make this work. But I'm going to move the camera kind of closer so you guys can kind of see what's going on. Hopefully make everybody seasick too. Let's see here. So I think that'll be a pretty good angle. Basically right now I'm not in the high gear. I'm 1 up from it. And what I'm going to show you is I'm going to click 1 shift. So I should be in this second highest gear right now. Maybe I can get this just a little bit closer so you guys can see. Can you guys see all right? Maybe a little bit down. There we go. So right now we're in the second highest gear. I'm going to click once so that we are in the second highest gear. And I'm just going to pedal. And this is the best way to really see if you are having maybe some issues. And I usually tell people to diagnose it in the second highest gear for many reasons. The primary reason is if you can set up this gear and get it to work correctly, all of the gears behind it should shift pretty much perfectly because you set up that initial click. So once you get to that first center line in the gear where the shifter indexing is, communicating the cable tension right for this second gear, the rest of them should fall into place. A lot of people will try to do it somewhere in the middle, and you could do that as well, but this second highest gear is definitely the best. Now, a lot of confusion between what the high gear is and the low gear. So I always try to remember it as, and teach people to remember it as, high is hard gear. So the gear that's hard to pedal in. The low gear is the light gear. So HHLL, that's the best way to communicate these. Low gear is technically gear 1. I don't talk in gear numbers. It's too confusing. We just talk about the high and the low gear. So like I was saying, it looks like it shifts well in this gear right now. So I'm going to shift up one more and we're going to see what happens. And now we have a little bit of noise. And what you're noticing, or what you can hear, you guys can hear that little bit of chatter, is it's actually trying to jump up to the next gear. And that is very common when you have too much cable tension. So if your cable is too tight, it's going to try to pull it up too much. Now, the gear below it, it works okay, but this is why we need to kind of systematically go between the gears and figure it out. So I'm going to move the camera once more so we can kind of see what I'm doing up here. On your shifter, slide this thing down, we have a barrel adjuster. So there is the cable housing goes into the shifter, and you have an adjuster here. And if you turn it clockwise, which is towards the camera, towards you guys, towards the bike, it's going to decrease the cable tension. So what we just saw is that the chain wanted to go up maybe a gear and a half when we only clicked it once. So that means that we have too much cable tension. Now, by me just turning this one turn, and you can feel there are little clicks in here. All shifters have this. So 4 clicks in one turn for this shifter. Some others have 6, some have 8. That should be enough to make that noise go away. And what we're going to do is just see if that one turn was enough. And this is kind of where, you know, you have to kind of fine tune it a little bit. But again, I set up this bike intentionally with some of these issues so that we could, you know, kind of diagnose them together. Let's see here. Camera. So I didn't do anything. I didn't shift. And now we can see that noise is gone. So I'll go back to the second highest gear, third highest gear, no noise. And, you know, this is kind of what we're looking for. Now, another really common issue, you hear that noise. That's not it's not trying to shift, it's staying in the gear. And you can see the derailleur's actually like vibrating, like something's touching it. And that's exactly what's happening. The derailleur pulley is actually touching the cog. So where we have the upper pulley here is actually colliding with the cog, the gear that we're in. And this is a very common issue if your chain length is wrong or your B adjustment is wrong. So I'm just going to walk around to the other side here. So we do have 3 adjustment screws on the outside of this. And if you're not familiar with you know, how box drivetrains are laid out, or any other drivetrain, like I said, this is applicable to multiple drivetrains. My suggestion would be, you know, check out our service manuals, our service video. I explain what all these are. But these are limit screws, and this is the B adjustment screw. Now the B adjustment screw physically pushes against the derailleur hanger, which the derailleur is mounted to adjust the axial positioning of the derailleur. So as I pull this back, I'm not actually pulling the derailleur side to side, I'm just pulling it back and forward. And this will hold the position. Now, the best way to set these up, when you're in the lowest gear, you want between a 5 and 7 millimeter gap. And again, this is in our installation instructions. What I'm going to do is have to kind of play with that, because this one is so out of adjustment that it's, you know, colliding with this gear 3 gears below where I want it to be. So I can't even figure out how to adjust it. And out of the box, you won't really see these issues unless your chain length is severely too long. Like if you didn't cut any links out of the chain, this might be what it looked like. So I'm going to to number 2 Phillips. I'm going to pull back on the derailleur just to relieve some tension, and it makes it easier to turn this screw. I'm going to go in on this one quite a bit just to see, and we're just going to pedal a bike. I'm going to do it from this side. And now you can see that noise is gone. So now it clears this gear, which is good. And if I shift up to the next one, let's see if the next gear shifts up too. So that noise is back, right? We know we didn't go enough for this gear. So I'm going to go, another couple turns. I'm just going to pull back on this again. And like I said, this is the easiest way to do this. And you can actually see as I do this, we call this part the knuckle. The knuckle is actually being swung back. I think I'm losing a little bit of camera here. There we go, get that better. Now, if you're too far, what you'll see is there'll be sloppy shifting down here. So basically where the chain leaves the upper pulley and will meet the cassette cogs, if the distance is too far, the chain is allowed to deflect. So when you go to shift, it won't actually be able to push the chain up to the next gear or pull it down to the, towards the higher gears. It'll just kind of like flop around in there. And that's very common when you see like maybe an older derailleur that has been retrofitted to have a really big cassette. So you have to clear this big gear, but the derailleur wasn't designed for it. So all of our derailleurs are basically designed for the ranges that we provide for both Prime 9 and 11 speed. And that's why you see, like on 11 speed, we have different cage lengths for box 1 and 2. And then for our box 3, this actually is capable of doing both 1146 and 1150. So this one was optimized for both of those ranges. But for the most part, our Prime 9 drivetrains are based around an 1150 cassette. So let's try to see what happens if I just go and I shift up one more gear. Let's step in front of the camera real quick. So I just shifted. We're going to see what happens. Now, you'll notice two things here. A, it won't even shift up to the lowest gear. And B, it seems like, it's rubbing in more than one way. Now, this is where the limit screws kind of come into effect. Out of the box, I believe our low limit screw, so this is the low or the light gear, this is the easy gear to pedal in. To keep it from shifting into the spokes, this is artificially, turned in quite a bit. And we never want to see the chain go over the edge of the cassette and into the spokes. So to avoid that, in manufacturing, a lot of these are set what would be considered maybe too far in for normal operation. I'm going to just on this low one, so on the box 3 and 4 derailleurs, they're labeled L and H right on the front. I'm going to turn this screw, again, number 2 Phillips, counterclockwise, and let's just see what happens. And that's one turn. Yep. So now it's not limited. Basically, all of these 2 screws do are keep you from shifting all the way this way. It's a stop. So it stops you from shifting to a certain point. And then the same thing on the high side. So we don't want to see the chain go over the end of the cassette and into the frame right down here, because that's, that's bad. What will happen is that chain will get jammed in there. You'll go to pedal and you won't be able to, obviously, because it's just, stuck in there and jammed up. But as we noticed with some of the other gears when we're setting the B adjustment, no, this one doesn't make too much noise. And I think it might be hard for you guys to see down here, but there is not an adequate gap. This one has maybe about a 1 millimeter gap, just a teeny hair of clearance in there. So again, we're just going to add on this one, that's half turn, about 1.5 turns. And again, I'm not sure if you guys can see back here, but now there's about a 5 or 6 millimeter gap in here. So whenever we, are in this lowest gear, there's a couple things that we really need to be aware of. A, that B adjustment clearance, and then B, if we actually set our limit screw to where we want it. So I'm pushing on the shifter lever right now. And you can see, actually, I'm not sure if you guys can. I think you guys can see there's a little bit of movement in there. But if I hold down on the shifter and I keep pedaling, it won't allow me to shift over the end of the cassette. I'm like trying to shift to the 10th gear, but there's no 10th gear. This is just a 9-speed cassette. So this is acceptable, but you want to minimize this as much as possible. And like I said, I think you guys can kind of see as I do this, it wiggles back and forth. I'm doing this from the shifter. So we want to minimize that. My low limit screw is just out just a bit too far. So again, going in clockwise is going to limit the range this way. So a little bit more. And now you can see there's really just a teeny hot hair of play. I don't even think that shows up on camera. And then we want to just check the shifting performance between the second and lowest gear. So no noise shifting between them really. That first time it was me because I didn't push it all the way to the click. But you shouldn't have any noise or hesitation. Now I'm going to come down towards the high gear. Again, I'm looking for any hesitation. We adjusted the B adjustment screw a lot, right? So if there was some issues, you would see it in those. Now I'm going to try to get, right now we're in the second highest gear. I'm going to try to get into the highest gear. So I'm just going to shift down. You can see, right? It's shifting between both gears. Now, just like we have a low limit screw, we have a high limit screw. So the H on here is for high, and what it's doing is it's keeping the derailleur from coming out too far, which is necessary because again, we don't want this chain to go in between that high gear and the frame because we don't want to chip the paint on a nice frame. But also we want it to be able to stay in that high gear. And what a lot of people, I think, they think those two screws adjust something in between the two gears, or the two extremes, the lowest and the highest. So if you're having shift issues in between, it's cable tension or your B adjustment. If your B adjustment's too far out, it's just going to be real sloppy. And if your cable tension's off, it's going to try to jump up 2 gears when you only shift 1, or it's not going to shift towards a high gear. When you shift 1, it's just going to stay there, or chatter between the 2 gears, which we call ghost shifting, like a ghost is shifting a bike because you're not doing anything. There's no input. So let's get it into this high gear and just see what happens. I'm going to do this slowly because we don't want it to jam. But again, this is the H or high screw. And I'm going to go counterclockwise, which will allow it to come this way. That was about a turn. So it's better, but it's still jumping around. So that's not acceptable. Let's go one more turn. Still kind of doing it. Just a little bit more. Now now it's staying in that gear, but you can still see it's making some noise. We want that to go away. Oh, I think I lost my lights here. You guys give me 1 second. There we go. Sorry about that. So again, you want to shift between the 2 gears. Now we're not really seeing any noise. It stays in the gear. It's nice and clean. The derailleur cannot come outboard towards you guys so far that the chain comes off. Now that we kind of got most of those adjustments, let's just go through the full cassette range all the way to low and then all the way to back high and see if there's any issues. I'm not so sure that there will be. We're looking for any weird noises, any vibrations, especially towards these low gears. That was me again, sorry. of like to do a couple turns just in each gear just to see. Yeah, so, you know, here we can see just shifted through the range, not too many issues. Again, all of these issues I fabricated before this video, just turning these screws to random positions and having to kind of figure it out along with you guys so you can troubleshoot some of it on your own as well and know, you know, kind of what symptom, you know, what adjustment needs to be made to resolve each symptom that we saw. I think this is a pretty good indicator of, you know, the issues shifting between gears. Now, that's one of the main comments that we get. I have shifting issues between gears. And that's very common because it's almost always one of these four things that we just went through. Now, you have plenty of other issues that you could run into, like we were talking about before. If the chain's too long or too short, you know, what happens is if the chain's too long, you'll never get in this high gear, the chain will just be very slack. There won't be any tension on it. Right now you can see I push on this chain and we have nice tension. That clutch derailleur provides you know, some resistance, so it's not too much. And if it was too short, what would happen is our B adjustment when we would get up to low gear would be closer to 15 or 20 millimeters, which I've seen from numerous you know, questions from customers through emails or through warranty claims. So chain length is really important. So every drivetrain is different. Every bike is different. The distance from the center of your cranks to the center of your axle is called your chainstay length. And that is like a big determining factor on chain length, along with the chain ring teeth count. So obviously this one has a little baby gear on it. This is a 28 tooth, I believe. And I have, you know, I have a 34 on my bike. I have some friends that ride 38 on their cross country bikes. They're animals. But yeah, so for each different setup, you have to figure out what the chain length is correct for that. Now, it's not too difficult. And this is a guideline I use for, again, pretty much any drivetrain. I'm going to move the camera and hopefully we can capture some of this. I don't have a very good tripod, so this might be a little awkward here. And I'm not going to put a new chain on this, but I am going to try to show you guys one of the main issues. So if we look down here, and I can see it, you see a silver bolt? This is our cage stop. So when there is no chain on here, this bolt or this area will rest against this little notch that we have here. And when that happens, that keeps the spring that's inside this knuckle from completely releasing all of the preload on the cage, right? So we want this thing to snap back just like that. If this stop wasn't there, it would just rotate all the way around and it would be a big pain in the butt to set up. Now, when we go and we set our chain length, we cannot have this stop hitting on itself, because that's how we get this chain tension. If those two parts are touching, then the chain's just going to be completely slack. We're going to have a bunch of shifting issues. You'll never be able to set the B adjustment up right. So, you know, this is something to be aware of. And it's, again, any drivetrain, not just ours. This is a similar problem. I've seen people with SRAM and Shimano drivetrains take a chain out of their box, just slap it on the bike, don't cut any links out of it, and that's exactly what will happen. Now, conversely, one of the two, if you go too far and you take too many links out, this cage stop is going to be so far away from its actual position where it holds it that, yeah, what's going to happen, just like we said before, you're going to have 15 to 20 millimeters of gap between your lowest gear and your upper pulley. So that's something that you definitely want to avoid. In our installation instructions, as well as our competitors, they have pretty good, and we have pretty good instructions on how to determine your chain length. But again, this is something to look at and really easy to diagnose. If there's a lot of gap in here and, you know, this in your highest gear, the angle of this cage is like, you know, down here, you're basically know your chain is too short. And when you get up to the low gear, this thing will be fully extended like that, if it can even shift into there. And you really want to avoid this. Now, this bike is a hardtail. There's no suspension on the back of here. But on a full suspension bike, when you sit on the bike and sag it, there is chain growth. And you will see this kind of come down just a little bit. So when you're in that lowest gear and you have that kind of, you know, your sag, you're sitting on the bike, you're going through stuff, you know, the bike is just, you know, moving. It's going to make that angle of the cage even worse. So we don't really want to, and this is not good practice. You don't want to pull a derailleur this far ever. Right now, what I'm doing is really damaging the spring that's inside of this cage. So not ideal. But that's where you want to look. You want to pay attention to this. This is a good, easy visual diagnostic for any drivetrain. I think it's important on ours. So we talked about some of these other ones, issues in only the lowest or the highest gear being the limit screws. I have good diagrams on these on our website and in our service manuals. Now, the other one is issues staying in one gear. So maybe it's skipping or noise issues where it's not trying to skip between the gears. It's only shifting up and over the gears in one single configuration. Now, there are many reasons that this could happen. Generally, it's from exactly what we were just talking about. And if your B adjustment is set too far in, so if right now if I take this screw and I turn it in maybe 3 or 4 turns so that the derailleur position is back. Let's see if we can replicate it. It's hard for me to do without putting my body in front of the camera. So if the derailleur cage was pulled back, you know, say about there, and the angle of the cage is not bad because our chain length is acceptable, but the amount of teeth engaged, and you can see when I do this, right, when I push this down, I actually just lost. There is one tooth that's not even touching on the chain right now. Now, it's not such a problem on these bikes that are not e-bikes. Maybe you don't ride them super hard, you're not a really strong rider, but if you get a really strong rider with a long travel suspension or an e-bike with a big rider on it, what will happen is if you don't have enough teeth engaged on the chain will actually skip up and over the teeth. And this is very common on a lot of e-bikes, especially full suspension ones with longer travel. We have a specialized Fiamingo here that even from the factory did it with its stock configuration and stock drivetrain. So if you were to put it into, say, the second highest gear, put it in the highest power assist mode, and just stand up and pedal out of the box, it would skip over the teeth into the next one. Now, there's really nothing that we could do with that bike. Switching it to a 9-speed with our Box 2 drivetrain actually fixed that issue because we do have more chain engagement in some of these higher gears than some of our competitors. But again, going back to chain length is super important. If your chain's too long, it's not so much of an issue. But if your chain is too short or your B adjustment is too far in, you're not going to have as many teeth engaged. And that's just something visually you can see as I pull this derailleur back like this. Again, my big fat hand's in the way. You can see the amount of teeth that this chain engages with changes vastly. I'm actually losing, just from that little bit right there, I'm losing 2 teeth of engagement. Now, if you use the 11 tooth as an example, if you lose 1 tooth, that's almost a 10% difference in total number of teeth engaged, because, you know, as you know, there's a large portion of the cassette that's actually not even touching on the chain, right? Only part that's touching on the chain is from where it leaves the pulley back here and then heads towards the chainring up here. So there's a good 30% to 60%, depending on which gear you're in, of the cassette that's not even touching on the chain. So you lose 1 tooth on an 11 tooth where only 6 teeth are engaged from the beginning. It's a huge percentage, and that's where a lot of the torque holding capability is. So if you put it in 1 gear, you pedal super hard, and it feels like it's skipping, and it's not skipping between the gears, but it's in 1 gear and it's just skipping, your adjustment for your chain and your B adjustment might be off. In the bike shop, we see it most commonly with worn drivetrains. Now, I have some of these on e-bikes, on our e-bike test riders that have 1,000, 1,200 miles, and they don't really have any issues. Every bike is different. Like I said, every rider is different. Some people don't even, use the high power assist modes in their bikes because their, battery loss is inefficient and they can't even get through a full ride in the high power assist mode when you're going to a, 25-mile ride with, 4,000 or 5,000 feet climb. The battery just can't make it through a full ride. So they'll use a lower power assist mode. They'll probably never see this issue, but it's an easy way to kind of figure out some of the, maybe one gear has an issue. Additionally, one of my good friends, Andre, is a infamous single speeder. So even when he has a geared drivetrain, he still only uses like 1 or 2 gears. Now those gears get worn out like that because he doesn't switch gears. And he generally has issues skipping in one of those gears because he'll just wear, he's using a multi-speed drivetrain like it was a single speed because he's an animal. But you're checking your chain regularly, looking for wear and deformation on your cassette, making sure all of these other adjustments are correct, are easy ways to make sure that those are not the root of that issue. So I think that's a good one. I think it's not as prevalent or common to see that issue on a non-e-bike, but it is something just to be aware of if you're having single gear issues. Another one, we get a lot of questions about this. So I'm going to move this camera back just a little bit. Sorry, make everybody see sick. So high lever input force. So say I just go to push on here and I'm comparing it to another drivetrain. And this feels harder to press. This is something that is a part of our drivetrains, especially our box 1 and 2 drivetrains, maybe not so much 3 and 4. If you don't use a good quality cable housing, you might see issues. A lot of our competitors, so SRAM has a little pulley on the back side of their cassette, which helps minimize this cable input. And Shimano has some really good shifter internals that allow that input to be decreased. Now, on ours are kind of like flat, where we don't have the ability to do that in some cases because of the patents that protect them. Now, by making sure that your cable is run smoothly, like I go back to that Specialized we were talking about, that bike has terrible internal cable routing. The cable goes in, it goes up around the battery, and then it's got to go down below the motor, and it goes up and over the motor. And all of those kinks in the cable cause added friction. On that bike, it's really difficult. There's not too much I can do. Even the previous drivetrain that was on there didn't feel great as far as your thumb went. But when I changed that housing out to nice Jaguar housing, it really decreased that lever input force a lot, even with the previous manufacturer's drivetrain. So a lot of stock bikes, especially this one included, this does not have good cable housing on it. This is the stock, unbranded, junky, not Shimano, not Jaguar, just some China brand cable housing on it. And it feels okay. In this case, for a demo bike that we just use for videos, it's okay. But if you're looking to decrease the amount of lever input force from here to get to a lower gear, check your cable routing. Make sure you have nice smooth bends in here. Check your actual cable housing. What do you want to call it? Actually, this is Jaguar housing. Maybe I did switch this out. But yeah, check your housing type. Make sure that it's something that's a better brand. And a couple drops of some kind of light lubricant inside of here, regardless of what drivetrain it is, will greatly help. Now, again, stressing especially on a mountain bike, the ends of the cables, both at the shifter and the derailleur. A lot of the times dirt will get inside of here. I don't really pressure wash bikes because it's bad practice. You know, I'll use, sorry, I think I have one right here. For the most part, I use like a spray bottle and a rag. This is literally just Dawn soapy water and in a spray bottle. Something like this is really good to clean bikes with. Obviously, if it's super muddy, like I was saying, I grew up in northern New Jersey. It's unavoidable sometimes to ride in mud. So, you know, if you got to hose down the bike, you got to do it. But just try to keep the water away from areas like this and try to keep stuff from getting in there, because over time it does cause problems. And even if you're really good about drying off the bike, water that gets in here over time will attract dirt to stay in there because it's impossible to dry out the inside of the housing. Now, all housing pretty much uses stainless steel, you know, strands that run through it, and our cables, along with most other cables, are stainless steel. So you shouldn't see rust or anything, but you know, there's definitely issues that are common with those. Additionally, with any clutch derailleur, it's going to feel harder than with a derailleur without a clutch. So if you're converting maybe a 2 or 3 by drivetrain to a 1 by, in almost all cases, you're going to have increased lever input force, and that's just something to expect. Another question we get a lot is dropped chains. So I know a lot of our customers will be, you know, switching from maybe a 1 by setup from another manufacturer to ours, and they'll buy one of our drivetrain kits, which come with a derailleur, shifter, cassette, and chain, but does not come with the chainring. If your chainring teeth are worn, this is probably the one main cause that we see drop chains from. If your chain is too long, you could also see drop chains. If you, like we were talking about before, you're in a high gear going downhill and there's nothing creating tension on here, you know, chain can just come off. And I can, even with a narrow wide on here, I can just push this chain right off with my finger. It's not like it's hard to do. The narrow wide definitely helps keep that chain on there, but your you know, if your derailleur and your system's not creating any tension in here, doesn't matter how high your clutch force is or how hard your cage spring is, you'll see drop chains. So check your teeth on your chainring regularly. Make sure your chain's not super, you know, clamped or stretched out. You know, those are super easy ones just to kind of check. Additionally, there are, I guess it's MRP and Praxis use a wave ring, which is where they're not narrow wide teeth. There's like one teeth that kind of points to the left and one tooth that kind of points to the right. And what will happen is those just don't play nice with, even with our 11-speed drivetrain. We've had multiple instances of people, you know, dropping chains with those, bending teeth on those, especially because those teeth are pretty thin. And, you know, that's just, it's not really a traditional narrow wide, so it's hard to really, you know, get rid of some of that. So let's see. Robbie's asking a good question. I have a box 1 Prime 9 and would love to see how the clutch is adjusted. I did do a video on this already. I'm not sure if Chloe's put it up on the website. Let me confirm. Let's see. Hey Chloe, did you put that up on our YouTube yet? No. So we will put that one up on the YouTube. It's super easy to do. I'm not going to do it in this video because we're already 45 minutes deep, and I don't have anything set up, so it's really difficult for me to show. But we'll have that on our YouTube soon. Basically, there's a cap here. You pull off the 3 screws, and then you can pull the cap off. You can pull the clutch actually out of the derailleur's knuckle. There's a 17mm spanner that you'll need to hold the actual clutch. And then with a T25 or a 3 mil, depending on if it's 11-speed or Prime 9, you could just tighten that that front bolt while holding the actual clutch with that spanner, just maybe a quarter turn, and that should increase your clutch force. If you're having issues like drop chains, like I said, check out some of the other things I was talking about. That's definitely super important. Let's see what else. Oh, some other questions in here. Nate's asking, regarding the high gear confusion, I like to explain it like the cassette was horizontal. It's shaped like a mountain where the small cog would be the peak, which is the hardest to climb. Therefore, the high gear is the highest part of the mountain. That's a really good, I never really thought about it. That's great, great comment. Who put that? Nate. Great comment, Nate. So basically what Nate's saying is, here, let me grab one. Here's box one cassette because it's all one piece. But Nate's basically saying, this looks like a mountain, right? And the high gear is the top of the mountain. It's the hardest to climb, and therefore the high gear is the highest part of the mountain. So that makes sense, right? I always just tell customers high, hard, low, light, HHLL. Sometimes people remember it. I think for the most part. Only in communicating with a lot of customers, some of this stuff gets really confusing because some brands will use numbers and, what's this gear? Is this gear 1 or 9? I don't know. Technically, if you talk about it in like a car, right? The first gear you'd start off in a manual transmission is gear 1. So technically this is gear 1, but it's so confusing, and which way is upshift, which way is downshift. That's why I always just try to keep it simple and say towards high, shifting towards high, shifting towards low. And but great comment, Nate. I like that one. I'll use that in the future. Let's see. I think there's some other questions here. If you guys have any questions, type them in the chat and I'll answer them. I think Chloe has a poll she's going to put up. With all of these webinars, I do my best to give you guys as much information in the best way possible. It's tough to, here's the poll. It's tough for me to hit every point because, there's things in my head that I think are important because we get a lot of customers that ask questions, but I want to provide webinars to you guys that are useful and insightful and easy to follow along. So my email address is Ethan, E-T-H-A-N, @boxcomponents.com. Shoot me an email. Let me know if you guys have comments. If I did a crappy job, let me know. Without you telling me, I would have no idea. I think Chloe just sent everybody my email and chat. Additionally, if there are topics you'd like me to cover, let me know. I know we had a couple interviews. I think those went pretty well. I don't know how interesting that is for you guys. We will be doing giveaways in some of the future ones. Like I said, we've been so busy around here with some of the other projects we have going on that it's hard for us to put a lot of time and effort towards, getting all the product together for the giveaways and doing. I do think Chloe has a discount code that she'll send out to everybody, but we don't really have a free product in this one. Now, again, I don't know how interesting that is to you guys. If you guys like free stuff, I like free stuff. Let us know, and we'll try to do giveaway stuff that you guys ask for. I don't really have control over that. That's all Chloe's thing. All I do is like make stuff and then tell you about it. So she has the power to give away product. So bug her. Let's see here. I think that's really it for my notes. Like I said, we get questions from all over the world and all different people. I feel like our manual and compatibility document answer a lot of the questions that most people have, but it's difficult for me to write a manual that covers everybody. Different bikes are hard to accommodate, and a lot of our for a lot of our customers, it's I had some guy call me the other day because he has a recumbent, which is like one of those bikes that you lay back in and pedal, kind of like that. Recumbent e-bike that he put our drivetrain on. And he said it works great. I probably would have said, no, it won't work at all. But he followed our instructions and kind of obviously had to make them work for that application. But I think that for the most part, that works. Let's see, I think I have a question from Eric. You should also suggest Yokozuna cables, and housing rather than Shimano. Those are super good cables. I'm not sure where or how many places you can get them. So Eric is recommending the brand Yokozuna, which I believe they're like a wrapped cable. They're very nice. I've installed them on a couple bikes. Personally, I'm all about what works the best for the lowest cost. And I know that Shimano SP41 is one of the best for the cheapest cost. And you can find those pretty much anywhere. There are lots of really good cable housings out there. The Jaguar one with the little links is like true compressionless, actually works really well. But very expensive. So for me, as a bike mechanic and someone who thrashes their bike, I'm gonna buy something else. But for a lot of my customers who maybe they have 4 or 5 different bikes, they get babied. Nobody's paying me to work on my own bike, so I never work on my own bike. They work like crap. It's just good enough. Shift performance is good, maybe not great, but yeah, I don't spend a ton of money or time on my own bikes. Now, you guys, you can buy whatever you want. But again, Shimano SP41, Jaguar has some nice housings. I would avoid a lot of the, if you have a stock bike that you haven't upgraded the cable housing on, check it out. See if there's any small stampings. I don't know if you guys can see this on screen, but there's a little stamping on this one. Every bike is different. So every brand uses different stuff from the factory. Usually they come on these big spools. I have one over here, and I'll chop them to length or have them pre-cut at, if they're building enough bikes, I'll have them pre-cut at the factory. So you can just slap them on. But if you guys have any other questions, please let me know. I think that's pretty much it for today. I hope that answered some of your questions. My email again is ethan@boxcomponents.com. If you have any questions or issues that were not resolved here, hit me up. Let me know what's going on, and I think that's it for today. I appreciate your guys' time. And check out in the chat. Chloe just sent the discount code. So I think it's 15% off. And you guys can use that for whatever you want to buy. I think that expires. But if you guys send me an email, I can send you another code sometime soon if you're not planning on buying stuff anytime in the next couple of weeks. But thanks, guys. Have a good day. Be safe. And go for a bike ride. Hope to talk to you guys soon. Have a good day.